The sad end for Adrian Doherty wasn't just tragic, it was baffling. On June 9, 2000, he died in a hospital bed in The Hague, one day before turning 27. He'd fallen into a canal and couldn't swim. He had a water phobia. Most people had never heard his name, even though he once looked like Manchester United's next big star. But this isn't a story of just sadness. It's about a rare kind of genius, one that didn't fit the game's normal path. Born in Strabane, Northern Ireland, in 1973, Adrien joined Manchester United aged 13. His coach at Moorfield Boys Club, Matt Bradley, wrote personally to Alex Ferguson. The letter worked. Adrien quickly stood out in the A teams, B teams, and reserves. Ferguson called him a revelation. His speed was like greased lightning. Adrien became only the second player after Duncan Edwards to sign pro terms at 16. At 17, United offered him a 5-year deal, something almost unheard of, but Adrien turned it down. He took a 3-year contract instead. He didn't want to be tied down that long. The talent was undeniable. Brendan Rodgers, his childhood friend, said that Ryan Giggs, Paul Scholes, and the Neville brothers all thought Adrien was the best player they'd ever played with at that level. Giggs himself said Adrien was incredible, the quickest he'd ever seen, and so brave. Gary Neville compared his low centre of gravity and tight control to Lionel Messi. Ferguson had such faith in Adrien that he put him in the first team squad at just 16 in March 1990. He nearly gave him his debut against Southampton. Adrien got a $200 bonus just for travelling with the squad. By 1991, he was set for his first team appearance alongside Giggs. Arsenal and Nottingham Forest both tried to sign him. Northern Ireland manager Billy Bingham called him into the U21 squad at 17, but Ferguson blocked it, thinking he was too young. But Adrien was different from his teammates. While they wore flashy clothes and drove nice cars, Adrien cycled to training on an old second-hand bike. He wore baggy Aran sweaters and had a guitar slung over his shoulder. He was obsessed with Bob Dylan, wrote poetry, and formed a band called the Mad Hatters. Adrien loved busking in Manchester city centre. He played improvised Dylan songs and enjoyed it more than playing football. Robbie Savage, a player from the year below, remembered hearing Adrien strumming in the next room. Brian McClare recalled his personality and intelligence, how much he loved talking about books and ideas. He showed no interest in haircuts or cars. While his teammates drove to training even for short distances, Adrien pedalled his old bike to the Cliff, United's training ground. He preferred busking to attending first-team games. He once said nearly all the apprentices were U2 fans and none of them were hip. Adrien was also immensely shy. Moving to Manchester at 16 left him with crippling homesickness. The club had to give him leave to return to Strabane. The apprentice digs were promised as a home from home, but the reality was different. There was a culture of intimidation and humiliation. Initiation trials included putting apprentices in tumble dryers, kicking balls in their faces and stripping them. Paul Scholes later said he hated it. These practices only stopped when a parent complained. For Adrien, this environment was particularly tough. Combined with his shyness and homesickness, he initially rejected a contract offer. He felt alienated from his teammates. He struggled to bond with the class of '92, even though they respected his talent. Then came February 23rd, 1991. Playing in a reserve game against Carlisle United, Adrien tore his cruciate ligament. This happened just 1 week before Ferguson planned to give him his first team debut. In 1991, a cruciate tear was often career-ending, not the temporary setback it might be today. Adrien tried to come back throughout 1991. He played in a youth tournament in Zurich and an end-of-season friendly in Trinidad, but his knee kept breaking down. He never regained the fitness needed for senior football. After 2 years of struggling, United released him in summer 1993. The Doherty family believed Adrien was badly let down by the medical care. His father, Jimmy, felt the club should have provided better support during his rehabilitation. For over a decade, they sought answers about the diagnosis and treatment. They never got them. United said they'd acted fairly and appropriately. The Professional Footballers Association agreed. The medical context matters here. In the 1990s, ACL injuries were poorly understood compared to today. Treatment was limited. Arthroscopy was just becoming widespread. spread. The bone patella tendon bone method was the main option, but outcomes were far worse than modern standards. Today, athletes expect to return to their pre-injury level. Back then, many careers simply ended. After United, Adrien made a brief return to football. He played 3 times for Derry City, the same team his father once played for. He scored on his debut against Cove Ramblers, but this spell was short. Adrien quit football for good at age 20. Free from the structured world of professional sport, Adrien began what some called drifting. He worked at a chocolate factory in Preston, Lancashire, then a hosiery factory back in Strabane. Later, he took various jobs in Galway, living above a pub at one point. Throughout this time, Adrien stayed true to his artistic passions. Even while injured in 1991, he'd pursued his interests outside football. He continued writing poetry and busking around Old Trafford and the training ground. The Mad Hatters kept playing. In early 1992, he spent a month in New York's East Village, performing as McHillbilly, hoping for a record deal. Adrien seemed content to move on from football once its path became clear. He embraced what people called a hippie or hobo lifestyle. His anti-materialistic nature and love of art perhaps made this transition easier than it might have been for others. While many athletes struggle when their sporting identity is removed, Adrien had always maintained interests beyond the pitch. In April 2000, Adrien moved to The Hague in the Netherlands. He'd taken a short-term contract with a Dutch furniture company. It seemed like another chapter in his varied post-football life. On the morning of May 7th, 2000, during his first week in the new job, Adrien slipped and fell into a canal on his way to catch an early train. This was particularly cruel, given his known water phobia. His parents had even told Manchester United about this fear during his apprenticeship, asking that he be excused from swimming activities. Adrien was found unconscious and spent over a month in a coma. He died on June 9th, 2000, just one day before his 27th birthday. Dutch police investigated and ruled it an accident. No drugs were found in his system. At the time, Adrien's death didn't command many column inches in England. The country was focused on Euro 2000, where many of his former class of '92 teammates were starring. His passing went largely unnoticed by the wider football world, but his story found new life in 2016 with Oliver Kay's biography, Forever Young, the story of Adrian Doherty, football's lost genius. The book won Football Book of the Year and was shortlisted for the William Hill Sports Book of the Year award. Suddenly, people began to understand what had been lost. Former teammates spoke glowingly after his death. Marcus Brameld and Craig Lawton remembered him as the nicest guy in the world and one in a million. His sister, Chiara McAneny, expressed sadness that her sons and nephews would never know Adrien. The book's title, Forever Young, referenced a Bob Dylan song played at his funeral. Adrien's what-if story often gets reduced to a simple question: what if he hadn't been injured? But the reality is more complex. His unique personality, with its artistic bent and disinterest in football glamour, might have made the modern game's demands challenging even without injury. The harsh academy culture took its psychological toll. The medical limitations of the 1990s made his injury far more devastating than it would be today. Adrian Doherty's life transcends football. He was a lost genius whose potential was recognised by the game's highest levels. His story challenges us to think about individual personality versus institutional conformity. It highlights how medical progress has transformed athletic careers. Most importantly, it reminds us that success and failure in sport depend on far more than just talent. Adrien never became the star many predicted. His life was marked by unfulfilled potential, personal struggles, and, ultimately, tragic circumstances. But perhaps his legacy lies elsewhere. In a world increasingly obsessed with celebrity and materialism, Adrien chose a different path. He valued art over money, authenticity over image, and stayed true to himself, even when it meant walking away from everything. Adrian Doherty never became a star, but maybe he became something rarer.